The night was quiet except for the steady sound of rain falling on the roof of a small roadside diner. The neon sign outside flickered, glowing red and blue, calling travelers in from the highway. Inside, the air was warm and filled with the smell of grilled food, fresh coffee, and baked bread. The tables were simple, the walls decorated with old pictures of the town, and the atmosphere felt calm, almost ordinary. Mark sat in a corner booth near the window. He wore a plain jacket, a faded shirt, and old jeans. His shoes were polished but not new. To anyone who saw him, he looked like an ordinary man stopping for dinner during a long drive. No one would guess who he really was. Mark was a millionaire, a man who had quietly built his wealth through years of smart investments. Unlike many who chased fame and attention, he never let the world know about his success. He preferred peace and silence. He preferred to live like everyone else. Mark enjoyed blending in. He liked watching how people treated him when they thought he was just a regular man. Tonight, the diner was half full. A group of truck drivers sat near the counter, laughing over stories from the road. A couple of teenagers shared a milkshake in another booth, while an older couple enjoyed their coffee in silence. Mark listened to the rhythm of the place, the clatter of plates from the kitchen, the sound of a song playing faintly from the jukebox. The waitress walked toward him with a notepad in her hand. She looked tired but moved quickly between tables with practiced steps. Her name was Anna. She wore a simple uniform and had her hair tied back neatly. Her eyes, however, carried a certain heaviness, as though she had seen more struggles than someone her age should have faced. Still, she managed a polite smile when she reached his booth. "Good evening," she said softly. "Can I get you something to drink first?" Mark looked at her with calm eyes. "Water will be fine." She poured water into a glass and set it in front of him. He opened the menu, but he already knew what he wanted. "I'll take the steak," Mark said. "Medium rare, with fries." Anna wrote it down quickly. "Anything else?" "A side salad maybe." "No, thank you," Mark answered. She gave a nod and turned back toward the kitchen, weaving between the other tables with ease. Mark watched her for a moment. There was something about the way she carried herself that caught his attention. She smiled at customers, but the smile did not fully reach her eyes. She seemed alert, almost cautious, as if waiting for something. Mark leaned back in his seat. He had eaten in hundreds of diners across the country, but something about this place felt different. Perhaps it was Anna's eyes, or perhaps it was the way the truck drivers occasionally glanced toward her when they thought no one was looking. He could not place it, but his instincts told him to pay attention. After a short wait, Anna returned with a tray. She set the steaming plate of steak and fries in front of him, placed the napkin on the table, and gave another polite smile. But in that simple movement, something unusual happened. As she placed the napkin down, she slid a folded piece of paper underneath it. Her hand trembled just slightly, but her face remained calm. Mark noticed every detail. He did not move right away. He waited until she walked away to another table before carefully lifting the napkin. Hidden beneath it was the small folded paper. His heartbeat quickened as he opened it under the table. The handwriting was quick and uneven, written in blue ink, but the words were clear. "Please help me. I cannot escape." Mark froze for a moment. He read the words again to be sure he had not misunderstood. It was not a mistake. The waitress had asked him for help. He looked up. Across the diner, Anna was refilling coffee for the older couple, smiling as if nothing had happened. Her hands moved steadily, her voice calm and polite. To anyone else, she seemed like any other waitress finishing her shift. But Mark now knew something was wrong, terribly wrong. He sat back, his eyes shifting carefully across the room. He studied the truck drivers, the teenagers, the couple near the window. He wondered who might be watching her, who might be the reason behind her desperate note. Nothing looked out of place, yet his instincts told him danger was close. Mark had lived through many situations in business where reading between the lines meant survival. He trusted those instincts. And now, in a quiet diner on a rainy night, he realized his simple dinner had turned into something far more serious. The steak sat untouched before him, steam rising into the air, but Mark's focus was no longer on food. He folded the note and slipped it into his jacket pocket, his mind already working. Something inside him stirred, the part of him that never ignored someone in need. He knew one thing with certainty. Anna was not safe, and she had chosen him, a stranger in her diner, to ask for help. Mark sat in silence for a long moment, his eyes on the paper he had hidden inside his jacket pocket. The note felt heavier than any piece of paper should. His food sat untouched in front of him, but his thoughts were sharp and alert. He knew the words were not a mistake. Someone who wrote "Please help me. I cannot escape" was not playing a game. Anna moved from table to table, serving customers with the same polite smile, but Mark noticed the small signs of fear in her body. Her shoulders were tense, her eyes flicked quickly from one side of the room to the other, and her steps were too careful, as though she was afraid of being watched. Mark looked around the diner again. The group of truck drivers at the counter laughed loudly at a joke, but one of them kept glancing toward Anna with narrowed eyes. His face was rough, his arms large, and his jacket had grease stains. He leaned a little too far forward every time Anna passed, as if making sure she knew he was watching. Mark felt his jaw tighten. He did not know yet what the man's role was, but his instincts told him Anna's fear was connected to him. Anna returned to Mark's booth, carrying a coffee pot. "Would you like a refill?" she asked softly, her voice even. "Yes, please," Mark replied, keeping his tone calm. He watched her carefully as she poured the coffee. For just a second, her hand paused, and her eyes met his. There was no smile this time, only silent pleading. Then, as quickly as it came, the moment passed. She finished pouring and walked away. Mark sipped the coffee, using the moment to think. He had faced business rivals who tried to outsmart him, but this was different. This was not about money or contracts. This was about a young woman who was trapped in something dangerous. The question was how deep the danger went and how he could help without making things worse. The truck drivers stood up to leave. The large one threw a few bills on the counter and walked toward the door, but not before sending a long stare in Anna's direction. She stiffened but kept moving as if nothing had happened. When the group left, the diner grew quieter. Only the older couple and the teenagers remained. Mark decided it was time to act, but carefully. He called Anna over again. "Could I get some extra napkins?" he asked. She nodded quickly and returned with a small stack. As she set them down, Mark slipped a pen from his pocket and wrote a single line on one napkin while she was near. He pushed it slightly toward her hand. She covered it with her palm and walked away without a word. When she returned a few minutes later, she placed his bill on the table. Mark unfolded the napkin and saw her response written in hurried handwriting. "They make me work. I cannot leave. They will hurt my brother if I try." Mark felt the weight in his chest grow heavier. This was not only about her. Someone had control over her life and her family. He looked at her again. She continued to serve the teenagers, her face calm, but her eyes told the truth. She was living under constant threat. Mark had choices now. He could walk away and pretend he saw nothing, but that went against everything in him. He had money, power, and freedom. She had none. He thought about all the times he had helped people quietly, without recognition. This was the same, only more urgent. When the teenagers left, only Mark and the older couple remained. The couple soon paid their bill and exited into the rainy night. The diner was almost empty. Anna cleared tables, and the cook in the kitchen shouted that he was closing soon. Mark stood and walked to the counter where Anna was wiping down surfaces. He spoke softly so only she could hear. "I read your note. I will help you. Trust me." Her hand froze for a second. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with both fear and hope. "You do not understand. They watch everything," she whispered quickly. "I understand enough," Mark said firmly. "Tell me when and where we can talk without them hearing." Anna's lips trembled. She leaned closer as if adjusting the napkin holder and whispered, "After midnight. Back door of the diner." Mark gave a small nod and placed cash on the counter for his meal. He walked out into the rainy night, his mind filled with plans. The drive to his hotel was short, but his thoughts never rested. He thought about Anna's fear, her brother, and the men who kept her trapped. He wondered how many others were caught in the same web. He also thought about the note she had trusted him with. For a woman who had no reason to trust strangers, giving that note to him was a desperate risk. At the hotel, Mark did not rest. He sat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. He made a list in his head. Step 1 was to meet Anna at midnight. Step 2 was to learn exactly what she faced. Step 3 would be to decide how to free her from it. The hours moved slowly. Midnight grew closer. Mark put on his jacket, tucked the folded note back into his pocket, and walked into the wet night. The diner's lights glowed faintly in the distance. He knew one thing as he walked toward it. The moment Anna had slipped that note under his napkin, her life had become tied to his. The street was almost empty when Mark returned to the diner at midnight. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the neon sign that once flickered brightly was now turned off. The building stood quiet and dark except for the faint glow of a single light inside. Mark moved carefully, his footsteps soft on the wet pavement. He walked around to the back of the diner, where a narrow alley led to a small metal door. The door stood slightly open, just enough to let a strip of yellow light spill onto the ground. Mark paused, listening. The air was filled with the soft hum of the diner's refrigerators and the dripping sound of water from the roof. There were no voices, no footsteps. He pushed the door gently and stepped inside. The kitchen smelled of grease and cleaning soap. Pots were stacked on the shelves, and the stove was cold. Anna stood near the sink, wringing her hands together. Her uniform was gone, replaced by a simple sweater and jeans. Her hair was tied back loosely now, and she looked even younger without the work mask she wore during the day. When she saw Mark, she jumped slightly, but then relief spread across her face. "You came," she whispered. "I said I would," Mark answered, closing the door behind him. "Tell me everything. No one is here to listen now." Anna glanced toward the window to make sure they were alone. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "My brother and I came here 2 years ago. We had no family, no money. I took the job at this diner, and at first, it was fine. But then the owner introduced me to his friends. They are not good men. They said if I wanted to keep my job and a roof over my head, I had to do whatever they asked. They gave me no choice." Mark listened carefully, his eyes steady on her face. "And your brother?" "They know where he lives," Anna said. "He is only 16. They said if I try to run or call for help, they will hurt him. I stay here because of him. I smile for the customers, I serve food, and I act like nothing is wrong. But every day, I am afraid." Her hands shook as she spoke. She clenched them into fists as if trying to hold her fear inside. Mark felt his chest tighten with anger, though his face stayed calm. He had seen greed and cruelty in the world of business, but this was worse. This was control over an innocent young woman who only wanted to protect her brother. "You did the right thing giving me that note," Mark said firmly. "Now you are not alone. I will help you." Anna shook her head quickly. "No, you do not understand. These men are dangerous. They watch everything. If they even suspect I spoke to you, they will punish my brother first. I cannot risk it. Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. I have resources you cannot see. Money. Connections. Ways to protect people. But I need you to trust me and tell me everything about them. Who are they? How many? Anna hesitated, her eyes filled with doubt. She wanted to believe him, but fear held her back. Why would you risk yourself for me? She asked quietly. Mark looked at her with steady eyes. Because I can. Because walking away would make me no better than the men who trapped you. You chose me to give that note. That means something. Now let me do what is right. For a long moment, silence filled the kitchen. The clock ticked on the wall, and the faint sound of a car passed on the street outside. At last, Anna gave a small nod. There are 3 of them, she whispered. One is the diner's owner. The others are men who come here often. The large man you saw tonight is one of them. His name is Rick. He is the one who scares me the most. He follows me when I leave. He makes sure I know I cannot escape. Mark memorized the names and details as she spoke. And your brother? He stays in a small room at the back of an old building on Pine Street. They know where he is. If I am late for work or if I refuse an order, they threaten him. That is how they keep me silent. Mark's mind worked quickly. He needed to protect Anna and her brother before making any move against the men. That was the first step. Tomorrow, Mark said, I will find your brother and make sure he is safe. Then we can deal with the rest. Anna's eyes widened with alarm. No, please. If they see you near him, they will know. They will not see me, Mark replied calmly. I have handled bigger problems before. Trust me. She searched his face, looking for any sign of weakness or false promise. Instead, she found calm strength. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. All right, she whispered. But be careful. If they find out, it will be too late. Mark gave her a reassuring nod. Then we will not let them find out. The clock struck 12:30. Anna looked toward the door nervously. You should go. If anyone comes back and sees you here, it will be dangerous. Mark agreed. He moved toward the back door but paused before leaving. Stay strong. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for you and your brother. Anna nodded, though fear still clouded her eyes. Thank you, she said softly. Mark stepped into the cool night. The mist had thickened into rain again, and the street glistened under the dim light of the lamps. He pulled his jacket tighter and walked back toward his car. As he drove away, one thought guided him: Anna had placed her trust in him. Now it was his duty to honor it. Tomorrow, the fight would begin. The sun had not yet risen when Mark left his hotel. The streets were quiet, the mist from last night still clinging to the corners of buildings. His mind replayed every detail Anna had given him. He needed a plan, and he needed it to be precise. One wrong move could put both Anna and her brother in danger. Mark parked his car a few blocks away from the old building on Pine Street. From there, he could observe without being seen. The building was small, 2 stories tall, with paint peeling from the walls. A narrow alley ran along the side, leading to a back entrance. The front door was locked, but a small window on the ground floor gave a glimpse of the interior. Through the glass, Mark could see a single room with a faint light. A boy sat on a wooden chair, his head bent over a notebook. He looked thin, pale, and careful, as though every movement might be watched. Mark's heart tightened. This must be Anna's brother. Mark checked the street again. No one passed by. He took a deep breath and stepped closer, careful to remain in the shadows. He crouched near the window and whispered, "Hello there. My name is Mark. I'm here to help you." The boy looked up quickly, startled. His eyes were wide with fear. "Who are you?" "How did you get here?" he asked in a soft voice. Mark kept his tone calm. "No one can see me. I'm here because I want to help you. Your sister sent me." The boy's expression softened slightly. He took a cautious step toward the window. "You are telling the truth." "I am," Mark said. "But we have to be careful. Can you tell me where the keys to the back door are?" The boy hesitated. "They are hidden under the mat near the door," he whispered. "But if anyone catches me talking to you, I will be in trouble." Mark nodded. "Then follow my instructions exactly. No sudden movements." The boy crept to the door and lifted the mat, pulling out a small key. He whispered again, "Here it is. I hope this works." Mark took the key, holding it carefully. "It will work. Now stay inside, and do exactly what I say." Using the key, Mark unlocked the door quietly. It creaked slightly, but he froze and waited. When no sound followed, he opened the door wider and slipped inside. The boy followed silently. Mark guided him to the stairwell at the back, away from the windows. "You must stay calm," Mark said. "No matter what you hear, do not shout. Do you understand?" "Yes," the boy whispered. They moved carefully down the hallway, stepping lightly on the old wooden floors. The building was empty except for the sounds of their own movements. Mark checked the corners, the doors, and the windows. Nothing seemed out of place. Finally, they reached the front door. Mark looked around. The street was empty. He opened the door slowly, and a cold breeze brushed their faces. The boy took a deep breath, his fear still present but mixed with hope. "You are safe now," Mark said softly. "Let's get you somewhere your sister cannot be followed." "Do you know where she works?" The boy nodded. "The diner. She finishes late at night." Mark thought for a moment. "We will wait for her there, but first we need to make sure no one is watching. Do you know any safe place nearby?" The boy shook his head. "No. We usually hide inside this building when it gets dark." Mark's mind raced. He needed a temporary safe spot until Anna finished work. Then he would make a plan to remove both of them from danger. There was a small abandoned warehouse a few streets away. It was empty, quiet, and unseen by most people. "We will go there," Mark said. "Stay close and do exactly as I say." The boy nodded and followed. They moved quickly and silently, sticking to shadows and alleyways. Mark kept one hand near his jacket pocket, where he kept his phone and other small tools. He could not afford any mistakes. After several tense minutes, they reached the warehouse. Mark pushed the door open and led the boy inside. It smelled of dust and old wood. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the walls, creating long shadows. "You can rest here for a while," Mark said. "No one will find us. Your sister will be here soon. She has no idea yet that her brother is safe." The boy's eyes filled with relief. "Thank you," he whispered. "I was so scared." Mark knelt and looked him in the eye. "It is okay. Fear is normal. But now you are safe. And together, we will make sure nothing happens to either of you." The boy smiled faintly, a small spark of hope appearing for the first time in a long time. Mark felt a sense of determination. He now had the first part of the problem under control. Anna's brother was safe, and the next step was to reunite them both and protect them from the men who had held them captive. Outside, the street remained quiet, but Mark knew the danger had not ended. The men controlling Anna were still out there. But for the first time, he felt a sense of control. He had taken the first step. And tomorrow, he would take the next. The warehouse was quiet except for the soft sound of dripping water from the roof. Moonlight filtered through small cracks in the walls, casting long lines across the dusty floor. Mark sat on an old wooden crate, his eyes scanning the street outside the small warehouse window. The boy, Anna's brother, sat beside him, fidgeting with his hands but clearly relieved to be safe. Mark checked his watch. It was almost time. Anna would be leaving the diner soon. He stood and walked to the door, peering through the cracks to ensure no one was watching. Everything looked clear. The streets were empty, and the only light came from distant street lamps. "Remember," Mark said softly to the boy, "your sister will come here soon. Stay calm. Do not run or shout. Everything will be fine." The boy nodded, his face filled with both hope and anxiety. "I can't wait to see her," he whispered. Mark smiled faintly. "Soon, you will. But we must be careful. If anyone sees you, we could be in danger again." A few minutes later, a faint sound of footsteps approached the warehouse. Mark's eyes sharpened. He moved closer to the door, listening. The steps grew louder, and then a familiar voice whispered softly, "Hello." Mark opened the door just enough to see Anna standing outside, her coat wrapped tightly around her. Her eyes were wide, scanning the street nervously, and she clutched her bag tightly. The moment she saw Mark, her shoulders relaxed slightly, but a new worry appeared in her eyes. "You made it," she whispered. "Is he safe?" Mark nodded. "Safe. Come inside quickly before anyone notices." Anna moved inside, and her eyes immediately found her brother. The boy jumped up, running toward her. "Anna," he cried, and she caught him in a tight embrace. Tears formed in her eyes as she held him close. I'm here," she whispered. "You are safe now." Mark watched them silently, a sense of satisfaction and relief washing over him. This was why he had come. It was not about wealth or power. It was about protecting someone who needed help and giving them hope. After a few moments, Anna pulled back slightly, holding her brother's face in her hands. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to get him out. I was so scared." Mark shook his head. "No thanks are needed. We just have to stay smart now. The men who control you are still out there. We must leave this place before they notice anything." Anna nodded quickly, grabbing her bag. "Where will we go?" Mark thought for a moment. "We will take you to a safe house first. Somewhere they cannot find us. Then we will make a plan to confront them and end this once and for all." The boy's eyes widened. "Safe house? Where is it?" Mark smiled faintly. "Close by. You don't need to worry about it. You just need to follow us." They moved carefully through the streets, keeping to the shadows. Mark led them down narrow alleys and quiet roads until they reached an unassuming building. It looked abandoned from the outside, but inside, it was clean, warm, and secure. Mark had already prepared it with food, blankets, and all necessities for a temporary stay. "You can stay here for now," Mark said, letting them in. "No one will find you here. You can rest, eat, and feel safe for the first time in a long while." Anna looked around, her eyes taking in the small space. "This is perfect." "Thank you," she whispered again. Mark nodded. "We cannot celebrate yet. The men who trapped you are still out there. But this is the first step. Now you are safe, and we can start planning how to stop them completely." The boy smiled faintly. "I feel like we finally have a chance." "Yes," Mark said. "And tomorrow, we will make sure nothing can hurt you again. But tonight, you should eat and rest. You have been through too much." Anna nodded, sitting at the small table. She opened the food Mark had prepared and began feeding her brother. For a short while, the room was quiet, filled only with soft murmurs and the sound of utensils. The tension that had gripped their hearts for so long began to lift, even if only slightly. After a while, Anna looked at Mark. "How did you know you could help me?" she asked. Mark smiled. "I didn't know. But I knew I had to try. When someone trusts you with their life, you cannot ignore it. That is all the reason I need. Anna's eyes shone with gratitude. You are different from anyone I have ever met, she said softly. Mark nodded. I hope so. But right now, I need to focus on making sure the rest of this is over. You and your brother deserve a normal life. And that is exactly what I will give you. The boy looked up at Mark, hope flickering in his eyes. Will we be safe forever? Mark knelt down beside him. We will make sure of it. No one will hurt you again. That is my promise. Outside, the city lights flickered against the early morning sky. Inside the safe house, the three of them shared a quiet moment of relief. For the first time in months, Anna and her brother could breathe without fear. But Mark knew the danger was not gone. It only meant they had time to plan, time to act, and time to end the threat once and for all. Mark stood and looked out the small window, his mind already working on the next steps. The reunion had brought hope, but the real challenge was still ahead. And he was ready for it. Mark sat at a small table inside the safe house, staring at a map of the town spread out before him. Pins marked the diner, the building where Anna's brother had been held, and a few other places connected to the men who had controlled her life. His mind worked quickly, thinking through every possible risk and solution. Anna and her brother sat quietly nearby, eating the food he had brought. They were still shaken but slightly calmer now that they were safe. Mark looked at them and felt a surge of determination. He could not let the men have control over anyone ever again. We need a plan, Mark said aloud, breaking the silence. We cannot just hope they will leave us alone. We need to act first and act smart. Anna nodded, her eyes focused on him. What can we do? There are three of them, and they have power. They could find us anywhere. Mark shook his head. Not anymore. They have never faced someone prepared. We have two advantages. First, they do not know I am involved. Second, we have knowledge. We know where they operate and who they are. The boy looked up nervously. Do we have to fight them? Mark smiled gently. Not fight. We need to be careful. Our goal is to remove their control and make sure they cannot hurt anyone again. That does not require violence, only strategy. He traced lines on the map with his finger. Rick, the large man, is likely to come back to the diner. The owner and the other man will expect Anna to be there for work tomorrow. That is when we act. We need evidence of their threats and actions. If we collect proof and report it, the law will protect Anna and her brother, and these men cannot return. Anna's eyes widened. But how will you get proof? They will see you. Mark leaned back. We will not be seen. I know how to move quietly, how to record without being detected. And I have tools that can help. Cameras, audio, even tracking if necessary. We only need what is enough to show the authorities they are dangerous. Once we have that, they are finished. The boy looked relieved but still cautious. And my sister? She will be safe. Yes, Mark said firmly. We will make sure of that. Your sister will never be forced to live in fear again. And you will never have to worry. Anna's lips trembled slightly. You really mean it? Mark nodded. I do. But you must trust me and stay calm. The moment we panic, everything could go wrong. The three of them spent the next few hours preparing. Mark organized the small room, placing a few devices near the windows and doors. He explained to Anna and her brother how to stay out of sight and what to do if anyone approached. Remember, he said, no one knows we are here. That is our advantage. We use it carefully, and everything will work. By early morning, the city outside began to stir. The streets slowly filled with cars and people heading to work. Mark watched from the window as the diner started to light up for the day. He could see Anna's co-workers arriving and the first customers coming in. The men would arrive soon, following their routine, not knowing a plan was already in motion. "Stay ready," Mark whispered. "They will come, and when they do, we record everything. That will be enough to end their control permanently." Anna and her brother nodded, their fear replaced with cautious hope. For the first time, they felt like they had an ally who truly cared about their safety. Mark checked his watch. "In 2 hours, we move. I will be at the diner before they arrive. You stay here, hidden. Do not make a sound. I will call you when it is safe." Anna swallowed hard but gave a small nod. Her brother held her hand tightly, trusting Mark completely. The air was thick with tension, but also with determination. As the morning sun rose higher, Mark prepared to leave. He put on his jacket, checked his bag for the tools he needed, and took a deep breath. He was ready. Today would be the day the men lost their control and Anna and her brother gained their freedom. Outside, the streets buzzed with normal life, unaware of the quiet battle about to take place inside a small diner. Mark's calm confidence contrasted with the fear and arrogance of the men who thought they were in control. Mark drove slowly to the diner, keeping a watchful eye on the surroundings. Every movement, every sound, was analyzed. He parked a block away and watched. The diner's lights glowed, and a few early customers arrived. Then, he saw them, Rick and the other man, moving toward the diner, unaware that their actions were about to be recorded. Mark smiled faintly. The first step was about to begin. The plan was simple but powerful: gather proof, remove the threat, and ensure Anna and her brother would never face fear again. The day was brightening, but the danger had never been more real. And Mark was ready to face it. Mark parked a short distance from the diner and waited in his car. He could see the front clearly, and from this vantage point, he could monitor every movement. The streets were quiet, with only a few early morning pedestrians passing by. He checked the small camera in his bag one last time, making sure it was ready. Today, the danger would end. Inside the diner, Rick and the other man entered with casual confidence. They believed they controlled everything, that Anna would continue to obey them. But they had no idea that Mark was waiting. He watched as they leaned on the counter, speaking quietly to the owner, who looked nervous but unaware of what was coming. Mark took a deep breath. Every second counted. He activated the camera and positioned it to capture the men clearly. He also had a small audio device hidden near the cash register to record their threats. This would be enough evidence to ensure they could not harm Anna or her brother again. Rick leaned toward Anna as she brought a coffee cup. "Make sure my order is right," he said, his tone sharp. "You know what happens if you make a mistake." Anna's hands shook slightly, but she served the coffee calmly. Her eyes flicked toward the kitchen where Mark had planned the camera placement. She whispered softly, "It's okay. He is ready." Mark nodded to himself. Everything was going according to plan. The men had no idea they were being recorded, and the evidence was strong enough to put an end to their threats. The owner leaned closer to Rick and the other man, whispering something that made them both laugh. The audio device caught every word, every hint of threat, every sign of control. Mark could feel the tension in his chest slowly easing. Soon, this nightmare would be over. After several tense minutes, Mark saw the perfect moment. The men left the counter to take a call outside. He moved quickly, slipping inside the diner quietly. He made his way to the back, ensuring no one could see him. Anna and her brother were hidden in a small storage room, waiting. Mark opened the door quietly. "Everything is going according to plan," he whispered. "Stay here until I call you. We are almost done." The boy's eyes were wide with excitement. "Will we finally be safe?" he asked. "Yes," Mark replied firmly. "Today, nothing will hurt you again." He returned to the front of the diner, observing the men from the corner. Rick returned with the other man, unaware that the evidence against them was being recorded. Mark's phone buzzed silently. He checked the message he had sent in advance to the local authorities. By the time the men realized the trap, help would already be on the way. Rick leaned over the counter, speaking harshly to the owner again. "If she makes one more mistake, it will cost her. You know that." Mark pressed a button on his camera, capturing the moment. Every threat, every intimidating action, every word was recorded clearly. He also used a small tracking device to mark the men so the authorities could follow them if necessary. Within minutes, Mark received a confirmation from the police. They were on their way. Backup would arrive quickly, and the men would have no chance to escape. Mark felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing the nightmare would finally end. He returned to the storage room, motioning for Anna and her brother to follow him quietly. "It is time," he whispered. "We are leaving. Stay close and calm." They moved carefully through the diner, avoiding the men. Just as they stepped outside, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Police cars pulled up, officers jumping out and moving toward the diner. Rick and the other man looked around, confused, then realized what had happened. Panic filled their faces. "You can't do this!" Rick shouted, but his voice was drowned by the sound of the officer's commands. Mark led Anna and her brother to his car. "Get in. You are safe now," he said. They obeyed without question. For the first time in months, the boy and his sister could breathe freely. The police moved in, using the evidence Mark had recorded. The owner, Rick, and the other man were arrested for their threats and illegal control over Anna and her brother. By mid-morning, they were in custody, and the danger was officially over. Anna and her brother sat in the car, relief washing over them. Tears filled Anna's eyes as she held her brother close. "We are free," she whispered. "Yes," Mark said softly. "You are safe. No one can hurt you again." The boy looked up at Mark, smiling faintly. "Thank you," he said quietly. Mark nodded. "You do not need to thank me. You trusted me, and that is enough. Now you can live your life without fear." As they drove away from the diner, the sun rose higher, casting light over the streets. Everything looked normal, peaceful, and calm. But for Anna and her brother, life would never be the same again. It would be filled with hope, freedom, and safety. Mark watched them carefully, knowing his part was done. They were finally free, and the nightmare had ended. He had kept his promise. The weight of responsibility lifted, leaving only relief and quiet satisfaction. For Anna and her brother, the world was open again. And for Mark, knowing he had helped them reclaim their lives was enough reward.